Well, Cenk, I agree with everything you've said so far. Okay, that's all I have to say about it for today. Yes, look, from everything I understand, Hamas had 5 other ceasefires given to them that they would have gotten on better terms, where the tunnels weren't going to be allowed to still be destroyed. So they obviously were degraded to the point where they had to agree to something that they didn't want to agree to in the first place. So that's one point. And it sounds like even Obama said today that Hamas did break the ceasefire. So that's 2 things that anyone can say. Well, you guys never believe the government, so why do you believe the government now? But I think for every story that we ever do, occasionally you got to pick something to believe, right? I mean, yes, I think the government lies all the time, but there's something, you got to paper here. Sometimes you got to believe something. So yes, it's really shitty. I don't feel any worse for the soldier or his family than anyone else that's died on the other side. But I do agree with the original point you made about what the Israeli narrative is, which is what can they do? What can they do? They are in war. So when we show numbers, whatever it was, 1,600 versus 60 or something like that. Well, in the last 8 years, they've invested in the Iron Dome, which has saved their people. And not only has the Iron Dome saved their people, the Iron Dome has actually saved Palestinians. Because think about it, if the Iron Dome wasn't there and these rockets were all landing, well, if you think Israel's response is harsh now, well, just imagine how much harsher it would be if these rockets were landing. So the Iron Dome has saved lives on both sides. I think that we can say that empirically. There are tunnels literally being dug. I mean, think about the distances that we're talking about. This whole country is the size of New Jersey. So imagine if from where you live to the studio, which is not that far, 6-7 miles, people were digging tunnels. Now again, we can go to the who's right, who was there first, all of that. But what would any democratic nation do? What would any society? What their job is to protect their civilians. And as Jimmy and I were talking about before, this may not ultimately in the long term. Maybe this won't be good for Israel because maybe they're breeding many more Hamas-like people. So I think that's a legitimate argument.
I think if there were tunnels, right, we start bombing schools. I think that's what you do.
Well, no, but what would you do? I think so. That's my opening piece.
Right. So that's great. So that's a legitimate question. So let's take it one at a time. First of all, quick correction. He doesn't have a baby at home. The soldier that was captured. He's engaged, and so but you just relate to him more when you hear things like that. So now, what can you do? In the tunnels. Number one, of course, you could stop occupying. Right.
But that's not a starting point from here, because right this second, what can you do right now? So to say this is about occupation right now, they can't leave. Well, first off, they were there, and you can say the blockade. There were 2 years also that the blockade wasn't there, from 2005 to 2007. The blockade,
that's not exactly right.
It was pretty much not there. It pretty much wasn't. I mean, the blockade really kicked in after Hamas was elected, and they killed about 200 Fatah members. We're throwing people off roofs of buildings. And yes, they were democratically elected. There's been no election since. I'm pretty sure they're out of their democratically elected term.
Well, you see, so
we don't talk about every.
All right, no, I hear you, but super quick on the 2005, 2007 thing. So Israel, to their great credit, got the settlers out of Gaza and said, hey, you know what, we're going to leave Gaza. Now, what they didn't say is we're going to let them control their own borders, their own airspace, their own trade, etc. Right? In the beginning, there were some borders that were open, but as soon as there was a disagreement, actually started in 2006, and then when Hamas got elected, it was done. So the fact that
Hamas killed a lot of Palestinians in the process.
They did, but see, that's the thing. Nobody defends Hamas, so that's easy, right?
Well, I've seen a lot of Hamas defenders.
But okay, not your case, right? So when a country says the guys we didn't like won your elections, so we're now going to rule over your country, that means that country's occupied, right? There's just no question about that. You see what I'm saying? Like we can't say to Mexico, hey, we didn't like the way your elections went. You no longer have borders.
So I think that's totally legit. We can blame George Bush certainly because he had a lot to do with the elections in the first place. But also keep in mind that Israel left something like 3,000 greenhouses there. They left the horticulture biz. They left this stuff that was immediately ransacked. So imagine, did they give them a day? Did they give them 1 day of saying maybe we can use this for peace now? And I think that's the problem, because if you want them to withdraw from the West Bank, which I would like them to do too, I want a 2-state solution. But it would be crazy to say, well, withdraw now because look what just happened. Like it's much worse 9 years later.
So no, yes and no. So first of all, I've always said that Hamas firing rockets from Gaza after there was at least a withdrawal, right? At least they took the settlers. I think it was 8,000 people. That was crazy. It was never going to lead to anything good, and it certainly wasn't going to lead to the liberation of the West Bank, right? Or further liberation of Gaza. So I totally agree with you there. I agree with them. Throwing the Fatah members off the roofs was horrible, etc. The greenhouse thing. I mean, look, whenever there's a separation in Cyprus, for example, Greeks and Turks separated. Both sides left a lot of things behind. Yeah. Okay. So now on the tunnels, which it was an issue back then, and it's certainly an issue now. You say like, what are they supposed to do? I actually said in a show that I did with Anna last week. Look, I would send in special forces to deal with rocket launchers and tunnels that go into Israel. Okay, because tunnels that go into Egypt are usually to bring stuff in because there's this massive blockade and they can't bring anything in. So it's not
done by the Egyptians, which I think people don't acknowledge enough. I mean, Egypt is literally dumping sewage water into tunnels to stop the tunnels.
Right. Now Egypt and Israel are allies, and they're doing it in coordination with one another. But yes, it's the government of Egypt that's doing it. So to me, so when you call it terror tunnels, the ones going into Egypt are not necessarily terror tunnels. Have there been weapons brought in from there? I'm positive there have, right? But have there also been bread and food and construction material, etc.? Also, because there's a giant embargo. So on the other hand, tunnels that go into Israel, well, they're specifically for the purpose of going into Israel and capturing people, killing people, etc. It's not like they're looking to vacation in Israel. Okay, so that part is true. But Dave, you can't help but come back to the occupation, because if you've got an embargo, at the very least, since 2007, that's 7 years, you got to build tunnels, you got to dig tunnels. You don't have a choice, right? And the thing is, you say, what is Israel supposed to do? Well, look, we've had 47 years to figure this occupation thing out. I mean, I almost want to make T-shirts that says, how long? How long for the war on drugs here in America? How long for the Cuban embargo? How long for the occupation? How long can we go with policies that don't work?
Right, well, so a couple things there. So first, the 47 years. I mean, it's not like everything was okay before 1967. Actually, the PLO was formed in 1964. So it's not as if everything was okay and that the whole Arab world was thrilled that Israel was there. By the way, before 1967, Jews couldn't go to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, which Jordan controlled. Right now, Israel controls Jerusalem, but Jordan controls the Temple Mount, where they don't even let Israelis go up there. So it's not that they've done nothing in the name of religious sensitivity and all that stuff. But so to go to the occupation thing, I just don't. So if they pulled out right this second, let's say they did exactly what you're saying they should do. So pull out the West Bank completely. Do you think that brings peace?
I do. And so I don't think that it magically changes everybody's opinion overnight. I don't think that it magically makes 100% of Palestinians go the path of peace, right? And then my guess is there will still be some knuckleheads or even some groups that are firing rockets and we'll all be incredibly frustrated, etc. But yes, the original sin is occupation. If you cure the root problem, eventually you are 1,000 times more likely to get peace. Here's how I know. Let me just say one last thing about that, Dave. Sorry. Here's what I know how we're never going to have peace if the occupation continues. So you can't unless Palestinians all say, like I just saw Planet of the Apes, right? Dawn of the Planet. They all do this and they say, that's it, we're beaten, and we know we're conquered people. You just do whatever you like to us. Which of course they're not going to say that. So we're never going to have peace as long as there's an occupation.
Right, so I agree with the heart of what you're saying. I agree with it as an academic exercise. I agree with what you're saying. The occupation should end. In reality, they left Gaza, and if you're going to give them any credit for taking all their people out and doing something that was not easy, you know what I mean? It's a disputed land, so they did exactly what you're saying. If they were to do that, I just think there's no reason to think it would end. Hamas would be like, see, we got them to leave. And by the way, it's in our charter, kill all the Jews, so we're going to keep doing that, right? I mean, that's pretty good. We'll keep doing that. And now the borders are that much closer. You know what I mean? They don't control the Jordan Valley. I just think I think it's easy to say, and I agree with your sentiment. I do agree with it. Let them, and I think that was the intention of the disengagement. But in a practical sense, I just don't see how it works because they have an example of how it didn't work in Gaza. And look how much shit they got in. If you know what I mean, if the blockade was that strong, somehow they got 300,000 tons of cement in there to build all this stuff, all these rockets, all these weapons, syringes to kidnap people. people, there would probably be a lot more of that. So again, this is extremely complicated.
All right, so I want to address the charter and some of the points you just made, but we're going to let other people in. So
regardless of whether or not you think the new settlements would stop the violence continuing on, what's happening now is only leading to more hostility toward the Israelis. So I mean, I go back to the example of the United States using signature strikes, right? We do signature strikes or drone strikes. We kill innocent civilians in the process of doing so. And we say that, hey, we're out there looking for terrorists. But the more we do that, the more hostility, the more hostile people are toward the United States because innocent people are dying as a result of that. Now, in this particular case, you have 1,600 people dead on the Palestinian side, the majority of which are civilians. And so if you want to lead to peace, you have to stop what you're doing at this very moment. And if you look at military capabilities, if you look at defense capabilities, you have a complete mismatch, right? The Palestinian side, or Hamas, I should be very specific, Hamas does not have the same military capabilities that the Israelis do. And they also don't have the same way of defending themselves. They don't have the Iron Dome, right? So to say that they're equal and Hamas is launching these rockets, and as a result, the Israelis are going to go after Hamas with full force, even knowing that they're going to kill all these civilians, is not the right solution to the problem.
They're not going with full force. Nobody would argue that with full force, this thing would have been over in a day.
Okay, so they're not going full force. Maybe that's not the right word.
Has any other nation in the history of the world dropped text messages and leaflets and I know the firecrackers? I mean, has anyone done that?
But put it in your perspective. If someone told you, hey, you got a call in the middle of the night, someone told you, hey, dude, we're about to bomb your home. You have a little while to get out. I mean, is that really going to help you out? No,
I think that's perfectly legitimate. But if there was a guy that was, if we're arguing that they have rudimentary rockets that aren't doing anything, there was a guy doing it right next to my house, then there's a problem. I mean, that's just reality. That's not, you know what I mean? That's just reality.
If Hamas was bombing Israel, like giving warnings all along and killed 80% of civilians, my guess is that Israel would say, well, they're trying to hit military targets and they just happen to hit. So they say, no, they're damn terrorists. That's why they hit 80% of civilians.
I mean, what do you mean they're trying?
No, I'm saying if the roles were reversed, if Hamas killed 80% of civilians and killed hundreds of Israelis,
that's what they're trying to do.
No, I know, I know. But I'm saying is, if the roles were reversed and Hamas is doing exactly what Israel did, they're saying, hey, by the way, Israel's going to bomb you, and look at we have incredible firepower, and we bombed you, right? And we killed 80% of civilians, but that's okay because we didn't intend to kill civilians. I don't think Israel's response would be, oh, you're right, it was a good effort. I know you're trying to mainly hit our rockets and you killed 80%. No, they would say bloody terrorists, right?
Well, it's a sucky situation. It sucks for the civilians. I have great sympathy for the civilians. If you look at every single one of my tweets, that's one bad thing about Palestinian people. They have the same right to self-determination as I think the Jewish people have, as the Turkish people have, the Irish people have, and everybody, Armenian people, and everybody else. How is that for peace?
I just think that whenever you have a battle plan that includes bombing schools where you know children are, bombing UN safe houses where people who are already displaced because of the shelling are there, and you say you're going to bomb them, they ask you, can you please give us a few minutes to get these innocent people out? You say no, you bomb them anyway. That's murder. That's not a war. That's a murder on purpose. Okay, so there's no defending that. And so when you're doing that, you have to stop that right away before you can find a solution. You can't just keep murdering children on purpose with military-grade weapons only made for the battlefield. You're dropping them on neighborhoods. And so Benjamin Netanyahu was on Meet the Press, and he said the difference between Israel and Hamas is that Hamas uses people to protect their bombs, and Israel uses bombs to protect their people. Wow, that sounds great. So what he's really saying is if you use human shields, fuck your human shields. We're going to kill them. So if he was a cop and somebody was coming out of a bank with a knife to a woman's neck, telling the cop stay back, Benjamin Netanyahu would say, fuck that, kill that woman. You can't use a human shield. Shoot her right away. So that's their theory of war right now, which is a horrible theory, which is why they're losing. You lost Joe Scarborough, for fuck's sake. For Christ, it's all, you cannot defend bombing schools with a blue UN flag on it, especially after the UN begs you not to, or if you're going to bomb them, let them up. So that's, I just want to make that. And one more thing I'll say, Nicole Wallace was trying to push back against Joe Scarborough, who has turned and flipped. And she said, I think Israel, because he said, and you can't have this indiscriminate killing. And she said, I think Israel would push back on your use of the term indiscriminate. And I wanted to scream. I did scream. I'm like, oh yes, it's discriminate. They're discriminating when they kill children and women and innocent civilians. They know exactly what the coordinates are. They know right where that missile's going. They know there's innocent people in that school, and they're doing it on purpose. It's not indiscriminate. It's discriminate. And yes, we all want a solution, but you can't find a solution while you're murdering children on purpose. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Okay, so let me just want to say one quick thing. Understand that the U.S. does something similar with drone strikes. When we do a drone strike based on signatures, that's the cell phone in what we think is the right cell phone in the right area, but we don't actually know who we're killing. And oftentimes we'll bomb weddings, and women, children, etc. will die. You know what we do about that? We get really, really angry on the show, right? And we criticize our own government, as in this case, Jimmy is criticizing Israel. So Israel's not the only one who does it, but we get mad every time any country does it.
Right. The only caveat to that would be that, and this goes to what Anna was saying, is that they're fighting people that are on their border, that are shooting at them. So it's a little different when none of us know why we're in Afghanistan. You know why? I have no idea why. What are we doing in Pakistan? Killing people across the world that are not shooting at us. So there is a fundamental difference when people are shooting at you and have used suicide bombers and are trying to tunnel under you and all that. There's a tactical difference than what we're doing, which is going across the world. So you know what I mean? To do things. I mean, none of us can explain Afghanistan war, our longest war ever in 10 years.
Can I just jump in before I forget my point? I agree with you on that, right? I understand that if you feel like someone poses a threat, you want to fight back. But at the same time, you have to really think about what the end goal is. So if you genuinely want peace, you genuinely want a two-state solution, you don't go at it by doing the tactic that's going to lead to civilian deaths. And what they're doing right now is only leading to more hostility. That's the point that I'm making. You genuinely care. You have to change your strategy. And for some reason, right now, at this very moment, the strategy is not changing. If anything, the Israeli government with Benjamin Netanyahu continue to justify their actions, and they continue to make statements like, "Oh, we don't want to do it. They're making us do it."
Hamas wants dead Palestinians. It is completely obvious, and it's sad. And they're holding them hostage. If the Palestinian Authority,
to Anna's point, why is Netanyahu so weak that he's being controlled by Hamas?
Well, what can he do? I don't work for the Israeli government, so I'm not here to defend everything they do. The images are awful. And yes, as we get into a time now where you can see these images constantly, it makes it all seem worse. But it's also it's unequal because you can also be living in terror. And I don't think you can blame the Israelis for not having enough of them dead for defending. You know what I mean? No, there is when people show the numbers. I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but there's this constant thing where everyone shows the numbers, and they go, well, see, so the Israelis must be wrong because look, there's only 60 of them dead.
But I think what they're saying there is not to not protect your people, but don't kill 80% of civilians. So to Anna's point, that doesn't really help your cause. It turns the world against you, right? And then on top of that, it is not really. I mean, what people are worried about is what Jimmy said, that it is discriminatory, that they're doing it on purpose, that they're not such an incompetent army that they're accidentally killing 80% of civilians, that they're doing civilians. It's sad. That they're doing it on purpose to terrorize the Palestinians into submission. Okay, and knowing Netanyahu and how he's and not every Israeli government has done that. There's a lot of Israeli governments that have offered some degree of peace and negotiations, but this right-wing government has chosen that path. It appears. What would I do if I was Israel? One, I would go to the 1967 borders. I know they think that's something, but you know what? At this point, it is. Hold it. No, I would do it today. Let me explain. Right this second. Because right now they're not stopping because of pride, right? It's, oh yeah, we started this, and we're going to get every single tunnel. And we were right, and we're going to obliterate Hamas, etc. And because Netanyahu has 85% popularity rating, he's not going to stop that. Okay. But what I would do is say, Look, we already know the deal. By the way, if anybody cares, it's already been negotiated that the West Bank, Israel's going to get some percentage of it. I forget exactly what percentage. At one point it was 4%. I think it's higher now. They're going to get to keep some of the settlements. In return, they're going to give a strip of land that connects Gaza Strip to the West Bank. Okay, Palestinians don't get a right of return. And then once you've got those borders, I would build the world's highest wall, which they already have. They just built it in the wrong place. Okay, and you know what that wall did? It worked. So I would go to the Turkish solution, which by the way, a lot of people, it's controversial and a lot of people don't agree with. The Turkish solution in Cyprus was, okay, the Greeks at the time, and this is understand that it's the Turkish perspective, okay, but Greeks at the time in a mixed island with Greeks and Turks, Greeks were running the island and they started killing Turks. So the Turkish government said, we're not going to handle, we can't accept that. They invade Cyprus. The world is angry at them for invading Cyprus, but the world is angry originally at the government for killing Turks. So both sides are at fault, right? They invade, they take the whole island incredibly quickly, and then they go, well, we're 40% of the population, you're 60% of the population. You take 60% of the land, we're going to take 40% of the land. Everybody that's on that side, that's Turkish, you're going to, sorry, you lost your homes, you're going to have to come to this side. Everybody that's Greek on this side, sorry, you lost your homes, you're going to hate me forever, but you're going to that side. And then we're going to build a giant goddamn wall. And they did, and everybody's criticized them since. The number of deaths since that wall was built is 0. Okay? They separated the two sides, built a giant wall, and the Greeks know if you cross that wall, it's not going to wind up well for you, right? So if Israeli said, here are the borders we've agreed to, basically the 67 borders, I've got the moral high ground, I've built a giant wall, my guess is you're not going to want to cross it, right? And some will, and then Israel will punish them, and then we'll all come on here and agree with Israel.
Okay, well, first, I mean, they've had 2 offers. They had the 2000 offer that Ehud Barak made, which is in Bill Clinton's book, 90% of everything that you just said. That's what they offered. And Arafat said no and made no counter-proposal. Then they did it again in 2008. Ehud Olmert made over 97% with a certain amount of right of return. They were going to split Jerusalem far beyond whatever they're going to get now. And Abbas just didn't even show up to the meeting the next day. So I think that's partly, that goes into the Israeli psyche of, look, we pulled out of Gaza, look what happened. We've made offers, look what happened. So I think these things don't just happen in a vacuum. I think that, again, academically, I have no arguments with anything you said. I think in practice, it's a lot harder. And then I also think that, just to say that the 1967 thing, I think there's plenty of people, they weren't happy that Israel was there before 1967. So we shouldn't pretend that that's the case.
Right, so that's the final thing I'll address. So look, I think you make a fair point, and it's nearly impossible to determine who's right and who's wrong in the negotiations, right? So Israel's foreign minister in 2000 said, I would have rejected those terms if I was Palestinian. And he said it was slanted towards us and they didn't do the wrong thing. Now maybe he's wrong, right? And everybody's going to say, and Abbas is going to say, no, the terms were ridiculous, that's why I didn't show up, etc. And Abbas, everybody acknowledges a real partner for peace overall, right? So
yes, if he was running Gaza right now, this would be happening.
Right.
That's
so, but when you say they were right or we were right on negotiations, that's impossible to determine. So it's a fair point when you say they walked away, and they would say that it's fair to say that no, the Israelis made a bad offer. Okay. So on the issue of the charter and them hating Jews and wanting to kill Jews and stuff, people constantly say, but they want to kill all of us. Yeah, but number one, they don't have the capacity to do that, so it's theoretical. Whereas the killing that's happening in Gaza today is real. Those are real people that are dead. It's not theoretical, it's practical, right? Number two, every people that is oppressed, and whether you agree that they're oppressed or not, they certainly believe they're oppressed, says every time I want to kill them all. Like if Texas was occupied by Iran, what would the good people of Texas say? I want to kill every Iranian on the planet. Wouldn't they say that? Yeah. Right? That doesn't mean that if Texas were to get unoccupied, they would actually kill every Iranian on the planet. So they might, right? Yeah. But so I don't want to give them that capability. Okay, I don't want to test that out. Okay, but that's not a good excuse for. So let's occupy them what to the end of time? Because at some point, if they get strong enough, they might want to act on these theoretical things that they have said. Now, at the same time, don't get me wrong, Hamas is a bunch of idiots. Take that out of your charter. Not only is it immoral and unethical and wrong and the least progressive thing you could possibly think of, it's also stupid and counterproductive. Because all Israel has to say is, I can't let these guys go. If I let that guy out of my open air prison, he's going to kill me, right? And it's a very effective argument. So Hamas is stupid. So we all acknowledge that as well. Okay, Steve, you got a question?
All right. So my question is this: how many Hamas members must hide in a school here in LA for us to bomb that school? How many? I don't think we bomb that school under any circumstance here in the U.S. So if we had 100 Hamas members hiding my kid's school and they were firing rockets from my kid's school into Beverlywood, you think the U.S. government would bomb that school? They would not bomb that school. And I would fight like hell for them to not bomb that school. Even if my kids were killed by the people who were sending those bombs from that school. Bombing schools is just wrong, period. Whether they have human shields or not. And it makes me so sad to see so many good people make these ridiculous mental gymnastics to somehow justify that. That is wrong. If we can't get agreement on that, then we can't agree on the 67 borders or anything else. We have to say Israel is absolutely and categorically wrong to bomb hospitals and bomb schools. And you can't just say, well, Hamas is making us do it. That is so weak, and you don't believe it. You don't. You're too good and too smart to believe that, okay? There's under no circumstances, I don't care how many Hamas members are at a school in the U.S., would we bomb that school. We bomb the school because it's full of Palestinians. That's why we bomb them in Gaza.
You think the United States, maybe I'm not catching what you're throwing here, you don't think the United States, if there was a group of Al-Qaeda terrorists that were shooting rockets towards your house, 10 miles away, 15 miles away, you wouldn't want them to bomb that place as they were shooting rockets at your house, and possibly digging tunnels under your daughter's...
I would fight like hell for that to not happen if that school was full of children.
And let me tell you,
yeah, it's terrible. I'm not defending it. It's horrible. War is horrible.
No, Dave, you're refusing to say that it's wrong. That Israel's taking an action that is categorically wrong in bombing those schools. That is wrong.
The war crime. You can't say that's murder. That's not war. That's not war. You keep saying war is horrible. That's not war. That's murder on purpose. Those people don't have defense. The UN guy called the Israeli army, begged them to let the people leave that building who were seeking shelter. They said no, they killed them. That's murder. That's not war. That's not, I understand that Hamas is probably wrong, right? But still, I'm not saying that Hamas is right or Israel's right or how to solve this conflict. I'm saying that tactic is a war crime. It's murder. It doesn't solve problems. It makes things worse, and you shouldn't defend it because you kind of are.
I don't know that I'm defending it as much as I think it's easy for all of us to sit here and tell a country under attack what to do.
Yes, it's very easy for me to tell people not to kill children in school with a blue UN title. It's really easy. It doesn't take any thought.
You might have a more difficult
time. I say, what's wrong with you?
You might have a more difficult time discussing that if it was your family that was being attacked.
No, that's not right, Dave. Okay, if my family were murdered by Hamas and they want to murder me too, but they're holed up in a school, I wouldn't want to bomb that school. I would just not want to bomb that school. And I don't believe either of you.
It's an intellectual exercise about what we would do in a theoretical situation.
I would not bomb a school with several hundred kids who didn't kill my kids.
All right, so I understand. Let me add a couple notes here. One, let's understand that the schools are not being used as schools right now. They're used for refugees who are innocent. Okay, they're not all kids. They're their families in there. I don't think it makes it any better, but just I want to be clear on it.
And they found rockets in the schools. And the UN has admitted there's video of it.
No. They found rockets in empty UN buildings. They've never found a rocket in ones that were actually bombed.
I thought there were no empty buildings because they need all the buildings.
No. I mean, I read that. Maybe the news organization that reported that could be wrong. But my reading of that from several sources was the UN turned in rockets that they found in empty buildings of theirs. They said we didn't do this. And by the way, they turned it into Hamas. Hamas, they say they don't know who to turn it into, right? So I understand your point, but the ones that got bombed did not have missiles in them, okay? So there's never been any report of that. So, but look, let's keep it real because it is real. It's not theoretical. If there were, in Steve's scenario, if they were firing Hamas, Al-Qaeda, whoever was firing from Mexico, and they were firing from a Mexican school, America would bomb that school, okay? As long as there was Mexican kids in it. If there were American kids in that school, America would not bomb that school. You know it, everybody knows it, okay? Now, it doesn't make what America does right. No, it would be just as reprehensible, and I would agree with Jimmy and Steve and everybody who's mad at it. Like, don't kill those Mexican kids, even if those rockets are coming towards my family, okay? I can't have you killing those Mexican kids, right? Now, in this situation, you know, I know everybody knows that if inside that UN protected school, which is for refugees, okay, you had Israelis, you know that Israel would not bomb.
Yes, war sucks.
Right. So they're saying we are willing to bomb that refugee building because there's Palestinians in there and not Israelis, and we don't care as much about them.
Well, in war, nobody cares as much about the other side as they care about theirs.
Okay, and so that's,
Yeah,
and so
I
a lot of
agree
people
with
think that's a fair point, and a lot of progressives, I'm getting the sense, and I agree with, is that we think we should do better than that. Whether we're the U.S., whether we're Israel,
So I think
that we
we
should care about civilians.
Of course,
in the middle
of
of
course.
war.
There's rules to war.
But there aren't rules to war. There aren't really rules to war. We can all intellectualize the rules to war, but there aren't really rules to war. Hamas, everything they do is against all the rules of war by shooting from civilian areas at civilian areas. So they're doing a double war crime. But I don't believe that there's no rules to war. You know, that's not real. Again, it's an intellectual exercise.
And terrorists. I'll let you
No,
know.
okay, look, guys, we got last thing. Okay, yeah, there are only rules to war when one side is much stronger than the other. So I agree with both sides here. So let me explain what I mean by that. When it's an actual existential threat, we've seen what the U.S. has done. We dropped 2 nuclear bombs on civilian populations in Japan. We firebombed Tokyo. We firebombed Dresden. We kill civilians in mass because war is war, and we had to win and they had to lose. Right? The problem is when there's an imbalance of power, and the U.S. goes into Iraq, and it's not an open question as to who's going to win. We're going to win, so we should try to minimize civilian damage because it's not existential for us, and we know it, and we know we don't have to kill those civilians. That's a choice we're making. And the same goes for Israel because Israel is infinitely stronger than Palestine.
So I'm with you on the first part of that, but it is existential for them. I think this is the part.
See, that I totally disagree.
They have Hezbollah has 40,000 rockets facing them. They've got a civil war in
Do you
Syria.
think Israel could possibly lose? You know,
I think anything is possible. The history of the Jewish people is a pretty painful history. A lot of
No
people
question,
don't
but you know
So I think that's
Netanyahu
very-
press that button so quick.
Press what button?
The nuclear
and nuke Lebanon.
Lebanon, Iran, whoever he's got to nuke.
I mean, I think first off, I think that's an insane argument because you don't nuke the people next door to you. This is, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that's not really. But I think when you have enemies on all sides of you with weapons all pointed at you, that it is an
See, but that's
existential.
the thing. And I don't blame you, Dave, because everybody gets into, like, it's hard to escape your identity. So it's the same with me. Look at how I skewed the Turkish Cyprus thing, like the Turks are all the heroes. But I'm sure the Greeks would disagree, etc. Right? I mean, you ask my dad, good Turks, rational, progressive, etc. Now, in your case, there's a very good reason why you think it's existential because throughout history, it has been existential for Jews. They have been wiped out in mass. They almost got wiped off the planet. So it's understandable that you would be nervous about that, right? So very understandable. But it is not the current state of affairs. Israel is infinitely stronger than its neighbors. It has the backing of the United States, which is the greatest military ever built. It is inconceivable that Israel would actually be in danger without us rolling in every piece of equipment. We had to obliterate the entire neighborhood.
So think about what you just said, and then acknowledge the fact that for the last month they've had about 5 million people almost every night going into bomb shelters. Every night. So they're infinitely more powerful. And then at the same point, they can't use the infinite power because everyone says that's immoral. And they've had to have their people be in bomb shelters the entire time. So it doesn't quite shake out in that regard. They're not. Yes, they're infinitely more powerful because yes, if there was another war where 7 Arab armies attacked them, like in 1948, yes, I guess they could drop a nuke on. They couldn't do it on Lebanon because it's too close. But, you know what I mean? So I guess some of that makes sense. But a lot of this is just intellectual, not in reality. It is an existential threat. When you're surrounded by all countries that want to kill you, and a lot of them have a lot of weapons, and as ISIS is marching through Iraq at the same exact time. I mean, these are real things that are going on. So I think taken as a whole, yes, Hamas isn't an existential threat, but as the whole argument, this is a lot of people that don't like them, and it kind of sucks.
And so it's impossible to
And
agree
that
whether it is or not,
that doesn't deny, I think what Steve's point is that having civilians die is horrible, and no one is defending that. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not sitting there. I'm not a war planner, and I'm not sitting in a country that's under attack. So it's, you know.
Right. So we got to end it there. And look, no, because it's 4 against 1, and I think Dave did a great job of defending that position. You agree or disagree with whoever you like, but understand also that this was skewed. This was not 2 on 2. It was 4 on 1, and I think it took a lot of courage for Dave to come in and answer all these questions. So I want to thank him for that.